Okay. All right.
Testing.
Test. Okay. This is Coffee and Quarantine. No. What's the title of the episode?
Social Distancing Podcast.
This is
episode 1.
This is
Boosted Board.
Okay, this is the Social Distancing Podcast. My name is Sid.
And I'm Arushi Rai.
And we created this podcast out of boredom, I suppose, but also out of wanting to find a purpose during this quarantine.
Or in life in general.
Or in life in general, that is true. A little bit of background about ourselves before we start. I am a solutions business analyst. I am not a business expert by any means, but that's my job title, I suppose. How about you?
I'm a computer science student at Illinois Tech.
Cool.
And I'm a professional nerd.
Cool. I just want to give like a background about us, just so that whatever we say during this podcast is not taken as facts. It's more taken as opinions.
Alternate facts, you know?
Yeah. And every week what
Don't worry, we won't get sued.
Every week, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about different subjects that are affecting us through the current quarantine period, the current pandemic situation that's going around COVID-19, the coronavirus. We are going to be taking more of a business stance to it, just to figure out what's going on in the world and maybe find some reasoning to it, just overall just have a discussion about it and maybe elucidate more about the topic. This week we are going to be focusing on a specific company, Boosted Board. So every week we're going to be alternating between a choice of subjects. This week we're choosing Boosted Board because Boosted is one of my favorite companies. I've been following it since I was in high school. Next week you are going to be choosing a topic, and then every other week we're going to be choosing a topic each and be discussing over it.
That's our cat, Bo. He's not in the frame right now, but he'll probably come by soon.
So let's talk about quarantine in general and the whole pandemic situation. As we all know, a lot of companies have gone bankrupt. A lot of companies have experienced a lot of difficulties through the current coronavirus situation.
Especially small businesses.
I've seen a bunch of small businesses that I follow really closely. Like, for example, there's a company called Low & Sons. They manufacture backpacks, and they're a small company. The reason why I know them is because I was listening to this business podcast called Initialized. It's by Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit. And when I was listening to him, he interviewed Low & Sons owners. And the owners are... It's like an Asian family business, and what they do is they make backpacks and duffel bags, anything backpack related. It's really well made products, really stylish products. And right now, I've been following them for a while on social media, and right now what they're advertising is support small businesses. And when you go on their websites, all of their prices are cut down by $60, are cut down by 25%, and then you can also use the promo code support small businesses and you get an extra 15% off while you're checking out, which says a lot about how they're doing. Most websites where you go right now, it's pretty much Black Friday if you have the money to spend. And
so is this already a small business? Is this like already established business, and that's why are they sending money to small businesses? Like, why do they have a promo code of support small businesses?
The promo code, the whole thing about small businesses for them is just because they are struggling right now. They mainly manufacture in the United States, and most of the factories are closed. Most of the employees are at home, as you should be. So right now they're almost running out of business. That's why they set out the promo code support small businesses. They're not sending the money to other businesses, they're sustaining their own.
Got it.
That's the whole thing.
Plus,
And
no one needs backpacks right now.
yeah,
No one's going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going anywhere. Everyone's working from home, I assume. So what happened is Boosted Board, the company, was already going through some struggles by the end of their lifetime, and no one really saw that the company was about to reach to an end. And the company actually officially closed down in, I would say, March.
March, yeah. First week of March, I think.
First week of March, they closed down. And the surprising part about this is Boosted Board is literally the Apple of their field. They are the top quality manufacturers. They offer a skateboard at $1,200, but people buy it anyway just because skateboarders know the worth of how much one Boosted Board is. It's super high quality. You're less prone to get into accidents, into damage. They had really good customer service, so people really trusted this brand. So when they went out of business, it really shocked me.
I think that's also what people are finding out about all of those scooters that you can like rent on your app, that they're not the highest quality, and people are getting into accidents with those.
Right, we'll get to that in a bit. I want to bring that point out around, just because the co-founders of Boosted Board actually went out to create another company called Skip, which is now focusing on those scooters and on those scooter rentals. But what they're doing is they're bringing the premium quality of the Boosted Boards to Skip. But we'll come around that later. I just want to focus on the first part of this podcast, which is going to be what are the factors that really influence a business to fall from such a high position and just go and claim bankruptcy or tell that you're out of business. What are some of the factors? And for me, some of the factors that I identified while preparing for the podcast was that one could be that there was poor company management. There might have been poor company culture and company infrastructure. An obvious one would be supply chain issues.
Oh, definitely. That was the real killer at the end. And coronavirus just twisted that knife.
Definitely. Also, the US-China tariff laws that have been going on since Trump came into office.
But that's exactly what like disrupted their supply chain. It
Right.
was the tariffs.
Yeah, but that was the start of a fire, and then the coronavirus just like threw like oil into it and just made it into this whole explosion. And the last part is diversification of risk. That's some of the points that I've identified. Is there anything at the top of your head that you think would be a cause for you to go out of business through this whole thing?
Did they have any investors that they owed money to? Because I know like in some companies, if you're not able to generate enough revenue or profit to pay back your investors, they won't let on board new investors.
Well, the funny thing is, Boosted Board never actually made a profit. All of their money was coming from investments.
Really?
So that's...
Why is that? Is that because they were expanding?
Well, isn't that the culture in Silicon Valley anyway? Most companies don't end up making a profit. They just end up making money, developing this awesome product, and then what the VCs want to do is they just want to keep investing more money into it just so that they grow. They don't care about profit now. They just want it to grow and grow into this massive thing and then wait for a profit at the end of the line.
But usually, I know like right now you see the big failures, but usually when you're investing to grow that company. But also in a case of a crisis, you know that they could cut down those costs and start generating a profit. There needs to be some sort of future.
Right. I do think, however, they saw a future in like a long-term vision, and no one was really expecting a pandemic. And seeing how there was attraction while Boosted Board started in their adventure through their Kickstarter, and how many people were interested and how it gained so much more traction through social media. People investors must have seen that there was really a hope for this company.
That's true. They started on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
What made them successful on Kickstarter? Because a lot of Kickstarter projects go bust.
Well, to begin, this was first mover advantage. Boosted Board were amongst the first companies to seem, amongst the first people to seem like they were legitimate in the engineering. So when they went on the Kickstarter,
Right.
they showcased the engineering, they showcased the quality product, they showcased this amazing and simple Kickstarter that managed to raise, I think, close to, I would say, $400,000.
Okay, that's pretty decent.
That's pretty decent. It was Sanjay Dastur, the co-founder, and Matt Tran. Those were the two co-founders. Matt Tran was in charge of marketing. Sanjay Dastur was in charge of the mechanical engineering. But at the end of the day, as co-founders, you end up becoming CEOs, and through the company, we end up having executive roles, less mechanical engineering roles. And through their Kickstarter, once they launched, they launched in 2012. They got a bunch of backers. They exceeded their goal, and they deployed. They sent all of their products out. Some of the international orders were sent late, and the people from Boosted were not really responding during the Kickstarter, and that kind of shows later on this small part that we managed to rectify through the life of a business. It came back at the end of the business throughout the end of a lifetime, just because at the end of the business, when they declared bankruptcy, they also laid off most of the employees.
Right.
So while customers were having broken Boosted boards, no one was really there to repair the boards or to respond to their customer service emails.
So anyone who's going to be a buyer right now, they're going to see that. They're going to see that customer trust has gone down.
Well, if you go through the community, to begin with...
Buyer as in like buyer of the company. Because I assume they declared bankruptcy so someone else can pick up debt.
So funny thing, today I actually read on Reddit, I saw Sanjay Dastur. He created a Reddit account, he verified it through a picture holding his username up there.
Wow.
And he declared that he bought, Boosted declared bankruptcy, and he bought the rest of the shares and the rest of the assets of what Boosted remained.
Really?
But it wasn't him, it was Skip. Skip
acquired...
So the thing is, when we started Boosted, my thinking is that when they started Boosted, the company turned into this product that they were manufacturing to sell, but they were never making a profit because investors, I'm assuming, were looking looking like 10 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But Sanjay Dastur, as an entrepreneur, wanted to start a company that was making profit, and he saw that the last mile challenge that he was trying to solve, the last mile challenge that he was trying to solve was in renting scooters.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that with other companies like Bird during his Lime. But at the time when he started Skip, Bird was the big contender in San Francisco, but Bird was operating without consulting San Francisco, the city.
Oh yeah.
So when they started Skip, when Sanjay Dastur and his co-founder Matt Tran, when they started Skip again with one of the other co-founders, what they brought in, Mike Weira. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his last name, but when they started Skip, their whole thing was not only to respect city laws, to abide by city laws, and to consult the cities where we're expanding, but also start a company that would generate a profit, but also operate like Boosted Board, where they're producing quality scooters.
I think that's like a great iteration too, and definitely part of the learning process. Whereas like Boosted was like, let's do something fast, but still adhering to that quality.
Yeah.
And now like when they're trying to expand to solve that last mile problem rather than just going straight to the consumer, going about it through city laws or with the support of city officials means that there's no legislation that's going to come in and destroy their business.
Yeah, exactly.
And they can actually work with city officials to make this safer.
Mm-hmm. do you know what the last mile challenge is?
Yeah. So when we look at all these urban areas, there's a lot of times there's different forms of public transport like trains or buses, and these often drop you off to the closest point to your destination. Now, when you're trying to get to the actual place that you want to be, you have to walk. But for this last mile challenge, there are other forms of transportation that might be better, like biking, scootering, skateboarding, and it solves that last mile.
Right, exactly. So that was what the Boosted Boat company tried to solve at the beginning. That was very apparent on the Kickstarter as well, that they were trying to solve that last mile problem. How can I complete that last mile? But at the end of the day, they engineered those boosted boards so well that those boosted boards could cover 7 miles, 10 miles. They had excellent speed, excellent range, excellent engineering. So at the end of the day, they solved this huge problem, but the price point was also very high. How Boosted Board came to my eyes, and I'm assuming to most people's eyes, is that they sent a free board to fellow YouTuber and influencer and YouTube genius Casey Neistat. They sent him a boosted board for free, and the dude just tested it, compared it to a regular skateboard, and compared it to all the other gimmicky last mile transportations that they existed back then. Like how was it called? The thing where you stood on them and then you just lean forward and you
The
would
Segway? It's not the Segway, but everybody calls it Segway.
Right, that thing. That thing that exploded, right? It was
Yeah.
exploding people's faces. So Casey Neistat went ahead and compared it to those other vehicles, and slowly, while he was going around the city, he ditched all the other things and started using the boosted board. Every one of his episodes where he was forming his own company back then, he was always mentioning the boosted board. He was always complimenting the boosted board, always saying how it's fast, always showing how he was going around the city with his camera in his hand. And it was just every guy's dream that was watching that vlog to be like, I want this. And I was one of those guys in high school. I really wanted to build one of my own just because it was way too expensive. It's still way too expensive for me to get right now. But unfortunately, I won't be able to wait in like a few years until I can afford a boosted board, just because the company is not here anymore, which is very sad, but it is what it is.
But hey, we'll hear about what Skip is doing, right?
Yeah, and we'll hear what Sanjay Dastur and his friends will think of doing after this pandemic is over, or during this pandemic even. I think Sanjay Dastur is a great CEO and a great executive in this department. He's very knowledgeable as far as I've seen, and the guy knows what he's doing. So whether he thinks Boosted is a step ahead into what he wants to delve later or not, I think whatever he does will be a great choice, because I think the guy knows where he's going. So once those guys skipped from Boosted Board and went to Skip, no pun intended, they put in Jeff Russico into Boosted Board. Jeff Russico is he was a consultant at what's that consulting company called?
McKinsey & Co.?
Baker McKenzie?
No, McKinsey is its own company, but I forgot the name.
Right, McKinsey, the really famous consulting company, and he has a lot of experience in the industry. But once he joined Boosted Board, I did see how the company changed into what it stood for, changed into what it was offering initially. And the reason why Jeff was employed into the company was because he was hired to expand the growth. He was hired to expand sales. He was hired to expand manufacturing, to expand all of these. And he was hired during a Trump era. And what ended up happening by the end of it was that Boosted Board was no longer known for its excellent customer service. So there's a few stories about Boosted Board where people had trouble with their boards, And what Sanjay Dastur would do was like would be he'd just message the people who own the boards and be like, where are you? And the people would be, I'm in Austin, Texas. And Sanjay Dastur would take a plane, fly there, and check what's wrong with it. Batteries would explode in one of the boosted boards. He'd take a plane, fly there, check what's wrong, give another board for free. The guy was really invested into his company, and that's like the young and like entrepreneurial mindset that really was charming to the company.
Right.
Those stories really resonated throughout the community. And once Jeff joined the company, it took more of a corporate role. And I'm guessing at the time it was a good decision. You don't want a company to stay static. You always want to grow. But once Jeff joined, customer service seemed to have reduced. People were not complimenting the company for its amazing customer service. And I was just wondering,
how many rounds of funding did they raise? Did they ever raise rounds of funding before bringing in Jeff?
I think they did. So they went for a Series B funding, and during the Series B funding, I think they did raise $60 million.
Okay.
I think 60 or 80. I'm not sure whether my numbers are correct. I don't want to just go through my notes just because it's like a lot of notes and it's just going to interrupt the podcast. But they did go through rounds of investments, and it was... What do you think those rounds of do you think those rounds of investments affected how the company was and what it stood for?
Oh, always. Say if the founder's vision was only to sell boosted boards, then he has all the money he needs, right? You have revenue coming in, you use that money, and you delegate some of it to research and development, and then you keep on going. And there you have like a slow, sustainable company. But when you have big visions and you bring in VCs, they're going to be like, hey, yeah, I'll sign a check, because they see where it can be, but they're like, we got to bring the big boys in. And they'll put in people into your company.
Right.
And those people will actually change the company. Because, I mean, the guy's he had never run a company before, right?
Jeff Russico?
No.
Sanjay Dastur?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he had never run a company.
Right, exactly. So if VCs are putting in $60 million, $80 million, they're not going to give it to somebody who has never run a company before.
You're right. That's a really good point. And once Jeff Russico joined the company, the new vision of the boosted boards was not how to create a better board, it was how to create scooters now, electric scooters. So they entered this new market where extra research and development was needed. So that was where they were burning money into R&D. And once that was done, they sent a production notice to China, and China started producing those electric scooters. But there was always, I think, there were some issues here and there. So then.
Issues as in like quality issues, or what was wrong with the board with the scooters?
Performance issues, I assume. It was taking a while to come to fruition compared to, because those guys were experts in boards, in boosted boards, not in boosted scooters. So.
And how different of a game is that? Going from boards to scooters.
I have an engineering degree, but I don't think I'm qualified to say anything on that. But if I could make like some sort of a wild estimate, it would be like if you were making cars and now you chose to make trucks. You know, trucks as in like those big container vehicles. You know what I'm saying?
Like the big rigs.
Right. It's like it's the same game, but it's just different parts, different engineering. You have to calculate different things. Now you're not carrying people. You're more focusing on what the load you're carrying. So, for example, on a boosted board, it's just a board. So you're just wondering about how the people are gonna turn the battery or whatever. Now with a scooter, you have to wonder where the battery goes, how the people gonna operate this wheel, now there's no remote control.
That's true. You have to operate a wheel.
Yeah, exactly. The steering bar, rather. And I'm guessing it was a different ball game, so that's why it took some time. Mm-hmm. And now with the US-China tariff that happened, there was the problem that the company applied to become exempt of this tariff war, and the government the government agreed that they were exempt as the company that they stood for. They were exempt of this tariff war. So the government was going to refund them the sum of money that was due to them, just because of the whole tariff thing. So let's say you were dealing with China and you were spending $100,000 in production. I'm guessing with the tariff and everything,
it was like 10% tariff.
Yeah, so it would be $110,000. But now that they're exempted of this thing, the government now owes them $10,000. But the government still has to issue this money to the company Boosted Board.
Right.
That was one of the issues that the company was facing, just because that refund was coming in too slowly. So they needed to repay, I'm guessing, investors, creditors. They needed to repay customers. They needed to use that money to keep the company running. And the company couldn't run without that refund. That was one of the issues. And the second issue was that China was holding those scooters in the store just because there was no one that could export it. And China had closed all of the airports because of the coronavirus pandemic. Which was,
when did they start closing?
I think by January. And by February, Boosted.
And the tariffs happened in October, or was it November? November. Okay. So
this whole chaining of events, I'm guessing, must have been a huge stress on Jeff Russico, the new CEO. I don't know how I would have dealt with the situation myself, because this pandemic came out of nowhere. It was announced on the 31st of December of 2019, and in March everything was shut down. Companies were declaring bankruptcy. This was a forced recession, if I could say so. I'm not an expert. Please don't quote me and say when I'm stupid. But
you can't care about that at this point.
Yeah. As soon as you start a podcast, you can't care about whether you sound stupid or not, because you're bound to say something stupid. So I'm guessing in terms of the supply chain, it was pretty obvious that as a startup in San Francisco, it's not obvious, or it's not easy to use investor money to diversify your risks in terms of supply chain.
How much did they spend into like ads and stuff? I'm wondering, had they expanded globally?
Had they expanded?
Yeah.
The thing is, they did not need to spend that much money on marketing. I'm not saying they did not. They did spend a bunch of money. They sent a bunch of boards for free. They put a bunch of ads everywhere. But how they got their biggest break was through Casey Neistat's vlogs. Casey Neistat from 2015 to 2018 was the biggest YouTuber, hands down. He was getting through everyone's eyes. He was the biggest thing. He revolutionized how he was vlogging on the internet, and through him, the company just blew up. The company just got free advertising, and Casey Neistat just supported them as an admirer. So when you see someone who you admire and that guy is admiring a product, you automatically create that link directly to that product. And that's why everyone wanted to get a Boosted Board. Let's say I like Travis Scott, right? And Travis Scott really likes, for example, Lamborghinis, and he puts them in all of his videos and all stuff. At some point, whether I like it or not, if I keep watching those things, I'm gonna grow some sort of a likening to the things he's showing.
I understand the influencer effect, but going beyond that, because there's a lot of people that don't listen to hip hop. There's a lot of people that don't watch Casey Neistat's
definitely
blogs or vlogs. And expanding beyond that, that's what I'm talking about. How much did they expand their global presence before they started this scooter thing?
I don't think they ever focused on expanding their global presence forcefully. So the Kickstarter, on the Kickstarter, while I was scrolling through the comments, there was a bunch of people from Japan that were ordering the Boosted Boards. A bunch of people from countries that were not the United States who were ordering. And when I delved further through it, and when I went through Reddit, I just realized that there's a whole community of people that just love skateboarding, that just love longboarding, that just have this passion, and they're part of this community with their friends through culture, and that's how they got invested and got interested in this company, because in their community it was the big talk. I do know they invested in ads and marketing strategies through the United States, but through the global outreach, I'm not sure really. I am not sure about that. And why are you so interested into their marketing?
I'm interested in that because I think it. How much are they growing their market share by? That's what I'm wondering. How much are they like expanding? How many new people are coming on board? If that's being limited, of course coronavirus hitting you will hurt hard. Of course, like a tariff will hurt hard if you have a limited amount of customers, because you're losing out on that even little bit of profit that you have.
Surprisingly, Boosted Board was one of those companies that couldn't meet with the demand of a product.
Oh, okay.
They could never meet with it.
So that's the problem. If like their user base is also growing faster than they can like operate on, that's one of the major flaws of their supply chain. That means their forecasting models might be wrong. I mean, if they have a guy from a huge consulting company, I feel like that's one of the first things that they look at.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the guy, Jeff Russico, the reason why we brought him in was not only because the reason why we brought him in was to expand, as we mentioned before. So yes, that was his purpose, to be able to forecast how much they would need, to be able to meet the demand of how much they were manufacturing, to be able to consolidate the logistic parts of it, the supply chain part of it. But when it comes to supply chain, as a small company from Silicon Valley, I wouldn't say Boosted Board was a big company. $80 million, yes, it's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
But they were still a small company. They had only, I think, one office, which was in Mountain View, California. And would you say that $80 million is enough to blame them for not diversifying their risk in terms of their supply chain? Because when it comes to supply chain is not only you have factories in China. That's not the only thing that's at play. You also have to consider where the materials are coming from. Materials must be coming from Germany, from Europe, from all over the country. And so you have to make sure that all of these countries can all ship the materials to China or to wherever the factory was. And then this factory has the proper equipment to manufacture and then ship it back to the United States in Mountain View, California. And that comes with trusting relationships, trusting pipelines, making sure everything works smoothly, efficiently. You need to know people. You need to also have, I don't think you own factories, but you need to build contracts with those factories. All of these things not only cost money, they cost time, and not all countries can produce as well as China can. So do you think that Boosted Board did not diversify their risks? Can we blame them for not diversifying their risks in terms of their supply chain?
How long have they been around for?
Since 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
So they've been around as a company for 7 years.
7 years. Let's say Apple, for example. Apple, we compared Boosted Board to be the Apple of the industry. Let's see Apple. COVID-19 happened. A week after I was closed off at home, they announced a new iPad Pro with an amazing keyboard. Yesterday, they announced a new iPhone. Life is going as usual for them, but they're also the first company to be worth $1 trillion.
And they've been around for how many? Is it 50 years? Did they get started in the 70s or 80s?
Whenever Steve Jobs was a hippie.
So probably 80s.
Yeah, true. So
they've been around for 40 years.
Yeah, so for them, if Apple was to go down now, we'd be like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
You guys can't do this. We gave you those $1,000 for this premium iPhone. We're expecting the next thing. And they didn't disappoint. They are booming right now. Their stocks are going up. Everything's fine for them.
But they're also in a different business too. Like I totally understand in Boosted Board's case that they're selling a product where people need to be out and about to buy in. First of all, people are not buying during the winter months, at least in the northern hemisphere, where it's like cold weather, snowing, unless you live in California. So already there like amount of people that can buy is limited. And then where I'm so confused is that they went down very quickly after coronavirus hit, before we had lockdown. And that's where I'm wondering what happened there.
And that's what this podcast is about. So you would say that they were not expected to diversify their risks in terms of supply chain?
I think diversifying risk, the most basic thing that you can account for is disruptions in your supply chain and meeting demand. And those are things that you can slowly grow toward. You can forecast these things and then produce more of.
Right.
So I think there must have been huge problems in their supply chain for them to even get to this point, to be so fragile.
I mean, the US-China tariff war was already like a big knock at their door and be like, hey, you guys need to figure out something else because Donald Trump was not happy with the current US-China relationships. Donald Trump was trying to get manufacturing back to the United States, and from the documentary that we watched, American Factory, it was very clear to us that manufacturing in the United States versus manufacturing in China are two different worlds. Manufacturing in China is not the same thing. Manufacturing in China is so efficient. It's so labor consuming. It's so consolidated.
I think one thing that like one of these misrepresented notions is that manufacturing has left America. America is actually producing more in manufacturing than ever before. It's just that 97% of it is automated. So you were absolutely right in the fact that China's manufacturing is more labor intensive, giving more people jobs. And if you try to bring that same model over here, you can't do it because those jobs are meant to be automated anyway.
I mean, American Factory really portrayed it really well. The way workers are treated here, workers here unionize when they get pay cuts, when they're not treated fairly, when they are not given the proper safety equipment. In China, it's just like, hey, you're given a job, and they worship this job, and they come every day, and they put themselves at the expense of the job. They put themselves out there, and it's just a crazy culture. And the United States, we have such an individualistic culture. We would never be able to meet the quality.
So instead of crazy culture, you meant like a more collectivist,
I would say,
or community-driven culture.
I would say more of like we can think by ourselves of what's good for us and what's not.
Oh, true.
I wouldn't say that capitalism is the best thing, because capitalism also tends to lead people out of individualism and tends to kind of put people more into like this materialistic train of thought, which tends to kind of fade away from individualism. But the United States offers the opportunity of being individualistic, whereas China just strays away from it. When the people work at the
But also they have a really young workforce too.
That is true.
Who are more willing to take those hits early on in their career.
Right, exactly.
Whereas in America, like especially in those towns where manufacturing has left, all the people that are remaining there are not young.
Exactly. And I mean, if you want to learn more about how the United States compares to China in terms of production, just watch American Factory. I don't want to talk more about it. It was a really good documentary just because it covered both sides of manufacturing, whether it was the United States or China, and none of them. Okay, I wouldn't say anything. Honestly, I just thought that none of them were really bad. Anyway. So I want to come to the company culture. I want to know what are your thoughts on company culture, just because throughout knowing you, you've talked a lot about company culture. Whenever I was applying for a job or whenever I was applying for a company, you'd always tell me, hey, why don't you apply for this company or that company? And you would follow it with, they have amazing company culture. And while I was writing the notes for this podcast, I was just thinking that you'd be the best person to ask about this, just because you value it so much. And me, coming from where I come from, company culture was just like this bonus that you get, but for you it was like the thing that you pursued. Those were the companies that you wanted to work for. So at Boosted, after all of that I've told you, for me personally, I have no clue about what their company culture is. When Casey Neistat went to their offices and showed inside, there was not really a good indication of how the office really functioned. Everyone seemed to be doing their jobs, go about their day. There was no way to measure it, and he only went once, so that was the only glimpse that we got. When I went to check on Glassdoor.com,
Glassdoor.
I wanted to check employees' reviews just to know whether employees were satisfied or whether they were complaining, whether there was an issue. And when I went on Glassdoor, there was no reviews about Boosted Board.
Really?
None.
No reviews at all?
No.
How many employees did they have?
They have a lot. They have a lot of them. Not a lot for a small company. And there were no reviews. So then I looked up the employee list from articles and stuff. And I looked up all of the employees that worked there. And most of the employees that I looked up were higher ups, like marketing creatives, creative directors, and whatever. And most of them who left, they left by the time that Sanjay Dastur and Matt Tran left.
Right. Oh, I remember reading about how Boosted Board had a huge executive shakeup. I think last year.
Yeah, exactly. That was around the time that everyone was pretty much leaving, but Sanjay Dastur and Matt Tran seemed like they were leaving because they knew they were gonna join Skip. But all these other people, they just left and joined other companies. They just left Boosted. And some that were willing to comment on The Verge's article just said that they had no problem. They loved Boosted Board.
That's what I've heard. I've heard good things about, from their employees. I've never heard a negative thing.
Yeah, me either.
But that executive shakeup, because they lost a lot more than companies lose on average.
Right.
That makes me think that there must have been a difference between leadership, somebody wants to take the company a certain direction and the others don't agree with it, and they're like, this company is not going to work if it goes that direction. So that could have happened, and especially if they had close ties with Sanjay Dastur and
Matt Tran.
Perhaps they were closely tied to his way of thinking.
Right. Honestly, I have no legitimate proof. So it's not like if I'm stating facts right now. So what I want to discuss is, I just want to talk about how much do you think company culture is valuable as a strong point or a weakness to a company's shakeup. Just because...
So I think that employees start to lose faith if everybody in the executive team starts leaving. That's one of the biggest indicators that this company is about to tank, and everybody's jumping off this ship because no one wants to be a part of that company that tanked. Especially as a executive, you don't want to be the person who made this company fail and stay there. So you jump off before it sinks.
That is interesting. And I'm guessing that the people that jump off know their potential. So it's they're jumping off because they know they have something.
It's hard to find another job if you're part of the company, if you help tank a company.
That is true. That is true.
But as far as employee culture, I felt I haven't heard a single negative thing, so I don't know if that's the case in Boosted Board, but definitely in other companies. If you have negative culture, as in you're encouraging employees to grind it out without caring about their mental health, it's just not sustainable.
Like Fortnite.
Like Fortnite. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many glitches in the game, so many bugs, and it's sort of ruining the gaming experience
Yeah.
now.
I mean, we
And
just saw.
we already know that they like the way their staff operates.
Yeah.
They go through severe burnout. They're fired after a few months.
And we just saw Fortnite is over party trending on Twitter.
Again?
I mean, it was last week, but the discussion
really?
the discussion is still up. And after we saw that, Fortnite pushed an update, but we played it yesterday with our friends, and it was pretty glitchy. I mean, not saying that we're blaming our deaths over over glitches, but it was not the best experience.
We can't blame lag anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Find something else.
The next point that I want to bring in is, would you say company management and company culture is the same thing?
Sort of. So company management, the way you're managing the company is sort of what you value as a company. And that it trickles down to like how the overall company feels about, for the overall, like the rest of the employees, how they feel about the company and what they're expected to do.
Right. And would you say that might have been a problem for Boosted Board's failure?
Only in the sense that they had a huge executive shakeup.
Yeah, so we go back to that point again. I just want to talk about Jeff Russico for a second. Jeff Russico is and has proven himself over the years. He has had a good track record. I don't know whether he was placed by VCs into this position, just like we've seen in the TV show Silicon Valley, where we just plant this.
But I mean, you saw that in Yahoo too, right? Like they placed Marissa Mayer there.
He actually worked at Yahoo.
No way.
Yeah, he actually worked at Yahoo. And
when?
I forget when, but he worked there, and while I was listening to a podcast with him, he was just talking about Yahoo and his experience there, and his whole thing was that Yahoo, even though it's valued at so many millions of dollars, Yahoo was not generating any money. Anyone can use Yahoo for free. So the whole challenge while working at Yahoo was, how do we keep this going? How can we provide value to our customer without making any money in return? So how do we keep this train running without making any money? And I don't remember the podcast too well, but just to say...
So how does he have a good track record?
Well, he wasn't...
If Yahoo was on his resume.
Well, he wasn't in charge of where Yahoo was going. He was... I forget what he was doing there. I honestly should have noted this down. But...
Hey, we can have another take. Part 2.
but he has a good track record in the sense that he worked for McKinsey. He was a consultant for all of his companies. He worked at Yahoo, and Sanjay Dastur probably trusted him to take on Boosted Board.
Can you really say like being a consultant is a good thing though? I hope I'm not being too controversial.
Why? What's your take on consultants?
I feel like consultants don't provide sustainable value to a company. They'll turn around your like what's that like financial record called, like at the end of the quarter. Like they'll help fix you temporarily and squeeze out more profit, but they're not providing any sustainable value. They're working for those short-term contracts.
Gotcha. Well, I don't know. I'm not very educated about consultants and companies. I have never experienced or have never witnessed any consultants working for any companies. Oh, maybe actually in the social network where we saw the guy who founded Napster. He joined Mark Zuckerberg to remove from the Facebook. He might have been considered a consultant.
Well, I think he played a more influential role than a consultant. Being a consultant isn't like the literal sense of, oh, you're advising a company. It's being a consultant from these big four firms like McKinsey & Co. and the rest of them, Deloitte, I don't know. And they go into these companies and they come in with their fancy suits and PowerPoints and they're like, yeah, this will save your company, blah blah, do this and this, and it's very short-term thinking, and usually everyone ends up being unsatisfied at the end.
And how are consulting companies still in business today? I thought McKinsey and Co were pretty successful at what they were doing in terms of business.
The thing is, companies bring these people in and they provide short-term value. So if the company needs a quick fix, they bring these people in.
I see.
But it's not for the long term. You're not having 10-year contracts.
Well,
they're like, we'll quickly build some product for you and here it can work.
Well,
and usually those products have lots of bugs too.
I see. Well, I'd like to educate myself more on this before I can comment any further.
Oh yeah, I need to be educated more on this. This is my rough overview.
Right. But I also want to comment on one thing. Boosted Board. So when there's such a strong community around a product, especially around Boosted Board, you see businesses forming around this big company. So there were businesses, for example, there was this one guy, his company was called Boosted Bags, and he was making bags for you to carry around your skateboard. And while the company tanked, his company tanked too.
No way.
He quit. I don't know whether it was his side hustle or his main hustle, but as soon as Boosted Board declared that we were going out, he had to put all of his bags for sale, just do a quick sale.
Wow.
Just so that he could just clear the stock out and just make a quick buck and just wipe his hands from it. And
there's also plenty of people that don't know that Boosted went out of business. I keep on seeing people, it's been a month and I still haven't received my board yet. And it's like, has anyone delivered the news to you? Did they not at least have an automated email sent out?
Or maybe they're just not part of the communities. They're just not interested in being on the Reddits and the Discords or follow tech influencers that have announced.
But you shouldn't need to.
Yeah, you shouldn't need to, exactly.
You shouldn't need to be a part of this whole hobby culture.
Right.
That's the beauty of capitalism.
I mean, Boosted Board posted a blog post announcing what was going on, but I guess some people are just not as updated as everyone else. But I just feel so bad for the small companies because we're collaterals. They're pretty much collaterals just because most people probably relied on this infrastructure. Boosted Boards seem so promising and you build your whole thing around it. And then once it collapses, you just go straight down with it.
Right. It there's a ripple effect throughout the entire supply chain.
Exactly.
All those businesses or all those companies that were producing for Boosted Board, whatever was bringing in this raw material, not only are they impacted by the other effects of coronavirus, like less production, but now that they know that in the future that they can't recover this business.
Yeah, right. But I'd love to salute the warriors from it. So on the Boosted Discord, there's a Boosted Legacy Discord, and on that Discord, there's one guy that is repairing all of the Boosted Boards. I think he's an engineer or a technician or something, and I think he's forming his business now of repairing all those old Boosted Boards that are breaking now. He's just asking them to ship it to him, and he's repairing them, and he's sending them back. I guess that's the beauty of capitalism as well. Some people are hustlers, and some people just did not prepare for this event to happen, and once it happened, it's just too bad.
I don't think this is the last of Boosted Board, though. I really don't think. I think they had built up such a brand that someone is going to be willing to pay maybe a low price for the company, but someone's going to save it.
I would love to see Boosted Board come back. I've always wanted one. I have never ridden a skateboard in my life before. I have no clue how to do it, but if I was to buy a Boosted Board, I'd learn how to do it, just because we live in Chicago and traveling around the city in a bicycle is the best thing. But not getting tired and just riding a Boosted Board around, enjoying it, just relaxing and enjoying the view.
Plus, I think with Boosted Board, it's such a great concept because I feel like a lot of people feel safe on it, first of all. And then second of all, you can carry it around. Like, I've been looking into e-bikes because those seem like they'll get me around because I really don't want to have a car. I live in Chicago. I want to get around on through one of these other methods.
Yeah.
And having like an e-bike, there's always that danger of it getting stolen. I'm not going to pay that much money and be stressed out about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas a boosted board, at least you can carry it around. You can keep it under your desk.
It's the same responsibility as the laptop in your backpack.
Exactly.
You're putting in a charge at this coffee shop or whatever, you're charging it, and then you're back on the streets. It's up to you. But leaving a bike on the streets, Chicago is just going to rip it off of you.
So do you have any like closing thoughts or...
Well, my closing thoughts is I just hope for Boosted to come back. I also really would like to reflect on the whole thing that happened. The coronavirus pandemic, it just was a testing win. I keep telling this to all of my friends. It's a testing win. It was just a big wolf that was blowing a big win just to test whose houses were built of hay, whose houses were built of wood, whose houses were built of concrete. And all the houses that were built of concrete. Houses built of concrete just means that companies that had good management, companies that had eliminated or diversified all of their risks.
Not all, but at least a few.
A few, the major...
Like the basic thing, disruptions in supply chain.
Exactly.
And assessing that quickly.
Yeah. Companies that have good culture, companies that have already planned for this using technology, or that have diversified how they even make an income. Like, for example, Apple. Yes, they sell iPhones and iPads and all of that, but if all of this went out, they would still be making money from Apple Pay, from...
And worst case, companies should be able to pause operations instead of declaring bankruptcy. So there must have been something deeper that we don't know about.
That's exactly. I really wanted to know what was the deep thing, the secret that no one could get to, even the Verge couldn't get to. And for all the data that I went through, those guys are just clean. Those guys just had a mishap.
If we can talk to some former employee to get the tea, that'd be cool.
I mean, I would love to have a conversation with Sanjay Dastur or Matt Tran or any one of those guys. But for now, I would just like to say RIP. I hope you guys just come back like with more energy on the next round. I don't think Silicon Valley has given up on Boosted Board. I don't think the community has given up on Boosted Board. If they started a Kickstarter now or after the pandemic when everyone's financially recovering again, they would get back on their feet pretty easily, pretty quickly, if they promise the same level of engineering and the same level of product. So I just wish them good luck. I know it's a stressful time. What are your closing thoughts?
I think you've summarized it pretty well.
Well, that was episode 1. That was our first podcast. What are we discussing next week?
We're probably going to be discussing food delivery services.
Cool. The whole purpose of this podcast as well is for me to find a way to create video essays from the discussions. The reason why I have a co-host is just so that I can find other thoughts that I might not have covered. So I'm gonna be taking snippets from this podcast and creating a video essay. You can find it on YouTube. I'll leave a link probably on the description if you want to check it out. That was it for...
Yeah, and also I'm from Cupertino, so I follow a lot of like Silicon Valley tech news, and yeah, I just love talking about that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a whole different perspective.
Yeah. Okay, that was it.
Yeah, all right, good job.
Cool.
Thank you for watching if anybody tuned in. Oh, we have one watcher?
Oh, what the hell?
Oh my god. I don't know if they joined late or if that's